Hi everyone. So our friend Cloud Strife or Sea Strife, I'm assuming this means Cloud Strife, in the comments section of the previous video, the video that I released on highly intellectual INFJs, asked me what my thoughts are on INFJs in relationship to justice. It's quite a broad question, but I thought it's an interesting question. And this is an opportunity for me to interject something else as well, is that don't hesitate, you guys, if you want me to discuss a particular topic, you can ask me a question or ask me to discuss my thoughts on a particular topic in the comment section. I consult it all the time for inspiration as well as interaction, so please don't hesitate. If you are a Patreon supporter of mine, you get a little bit of more direct access. That is to say that if you ask me to cover something, and I see that there's justification, I will cover it if you're a Patreon supporter. But if you are not, you can still drop a comment. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I talk about. You know, it's just the light bulb activates. So now that that's been said, what are my thoughts on INFJs in relationship to justice? So again, it's kind of a hot take because I didn't get, I thought about it a bit, but I thought maybe sort of having a spontaneous reaction could be interesting as well. So here is where my thoughts are at present, at least in relation to that particular topic. It's a complex question because you need to figure out what kind of INFJ you're talking about. I think depending on the kind of developments you are going through as an INFJ, you're going to have a different take on justice. So maybe to begin with, we could mention by way of a preamble that the distinction is often drawn between justice and mercy. So assuming that someone is not a complete psychopath or a sociopath or what have you, people will tend to have a moral sense. It's part of being human to have a moral sense. Of course, the moral sense plays different roles qualitatively and quantitatively in people's lives, but everyone has a moral sense. The usual tradition in the MBTI, forums and in the MBTI literature is to say that T-types tend to have more of a justice approach to morality, whereas F-types tend to have a more mercy-oriented approach to morality. You could also phrase it as a way of saying T-types tend to emphasize more, the depersonalized concept of justice and retribution if you don't respect the law, and retribution is also, from this perspective, sort of a guarantor of your own responsibility. You pay for it. Whereas mercy is slightly more personalized, more individualized, and tends to emphasize forgiveness more. So since INFJs are kind of often usefully interpreted as on the cusp between feeling and thinking, I think it makes sense to say that there is both a heavy dose of justice orientation in INFJs and a heavy dose of mercy orientation. But that, again, and this is where it gets more interesting, I think, is when we try to get to a more granular level, a more high resolution level, and we ask ourselves, what kinds of INFJ are we talking about? Because you can well imagine that there's a huge number of INFJs around the world, and there's a lot of variety in different profiles and subtypes of INFJs. Now, in my latest book, I have proposed a classification of 3 subtypes of INFJs, which I will recapitulate again for you. Let me just mention the book. It's called The Infinite Soul. INFJ Life in the Modern World looks at the modes of being that INFJs embrace, their path to development in relationship to living in the world today, a world often felt as hostile, with a focus on helping INFJs recover meaning, meaningfulness, purpose, and the idea of having rich lives, even though, like I said, for a lot of INFJs, it's tough to be an INFJ in the world today. So you can get the book at the link below, or leave a review if you loved it, because that really helps me too, with the referencing in particular. So in the Infinite Soul, I propose this new classification of the INFJ type into three subtypes, I should say: the adaptive submissive, the type of INFJ who is making the choice of suppressing or at least repressing their NI individuality in the name of getting along with other people, tends to be that INFJ tends to be very a bit more insecure at some level about their personal worldview and vision, and very concerned to avoid conflict and get along with others. Now, the second mode of being is the solipsist, the solipsistic INFJ, the one who kind of actually is in a sense, the flip side of the adaptive submissive. So the solipsistic INFJ tends to be distrustful of the world, very distrustful of external reality, distrustful of others, and bathes in the womb of their NI vision. So again, kind of more isolated and more I would say, when in a sense, it's a little bit more advanced in terms of development than the adaptive submissive. Jordan Peterson, of all people, said, at first you are naive, then you become cynical because your naivety has been betrayed, and then you have the path to becoming wise. And in a sense, the scheme is a kind of parallel of my scheme. The naive one is the adaptive submissive, the cynical one is the solipsist, and the spiritualized or liberated INFJ would be the more like wise INFJ. That's the third mode of being. And what I would say is that the adaptive submissive is very likely to embrace whatever opinion is shared by other people and make it their own, even though it's actually not their own, but they're just not listening to their NI individuality, so they're not going to really pay attention to other stances. So if people tend to be more mercy-oriented, they will tend to embrace mercy-orientedness in morality as well. The morality of the others via a certain kind of dysfunctional use of FE directed from its core of purposes means that this is going to happen. So you're going to get a mercy-oriented adaptive submissive INFJ if they feel like the group that they depend on is more like that, or more justice-oriented if the group is more like that. As the INFJ progresses along their path of individuation towards solipsism, because it is a step in that individuation, I'm more convinced of it every day. It's a difficult step, but it is a step. Like, you're going to get much more justice orientation, much more sort of universalized, depersonalized, harsh for the sake of growth and for the sake of the preservation of an ideal type of morality. And so you're going to get more of a justice kind of perspective where forgiveness is not something that solipsistic INFJs tend to embrace as much as the concept of, okay, you messed up, you pay for it. Impartial justice is really appealing to them. Now, since the last stage, the spiritualized or liberated INFJ is a kind of synthesis of the first and second, in like a Hegelian sense, I like to say that. This person will tend to have such a level of highly developed NI-FE acuity that they will usually they will alternate between a mercy-oriented view and a justice-oriented view. They will tend to be much more sensitive to the fact that each case requires its own kind of moral assessment, and you can't morally assess absolutely every possible situation according to the same framework. Doing that is reassuring, but it's also limiting. And the infinite step, the step that the infinite soul makes, is precisely the step of kind of breaking out of this cage and appreciating the infinity of possibilities, among other things, of looking at particular situations and worldviews and decision making. And that's what is also required in the case of making a moral judgment regarding whether you should focus more of the exercise of justice or mercy. That's for the spiritualized. So ask yourself, what kind of stage are you at? And this will give you an indication of what kind of morality you're likely to embrace. Okay. There's also the Ecstatic Soul, which is my first book on the INFJ. It looks at the in-depth, considers the mind of the INFJ consciousness and its existential manifestation in everyday reality, what it feels like to be an INFJ in real depth. It has a lot of reviews. If you haven't got it yet, it's kind of a must read, so check it out. And as usual, Patreon is the lifeblood of my channel. You can interact with me there, suggest new content. I share some bonus videos with my Patreon supporters. You get priority if you want me to cover a particular topic, but mostly you help me keep the channel going from anywhere from $3.50 a month. It will be highly appreciated, but sure, consider it. And I'll talk to you next time, guys. Bye-bye.